Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. A criminal charge can follow you a long time after re-entering society, even if you've never been sentenced. Expungement is one of the few avenues to return to normalcy post-incarceration, but the process requires more than just a signature and approval from a judge. In fact, in Tennessee, expunging a charge varies from county to county. With all that being said, artificial intelligence, that's right, good old AI, has a role to play in helping individuals ease into reentry. Here to speak with us on the matter is Legal Aid Society's Director of Reentry Project, Savannah Quintero, and Vincent Morris, who's the Director of Compliance and Legal Technology. Savannah and Vincent, welcome to This Is Nashville. Thanks for joining us on a snow day.
Thank you so much for having us.
Really appreciate you both being here. Okay, so let's break down the basics. Savannah, tell us, what services does Legal Aid Society provide?
So Legal Aid Society provides a whole range of civil legal assistance to folks in Nashville and kind of surrounding areas. We work on everything from housing to consumer problems. We can do help with benefits, public benefits access, and we also do reentry work, which is what I kind of have the pleasure of working on at Legal Aid.
Well, tell me about the reentry work that you do, and in terms of how it connects to expungement. Like, is there a general process for how expungement is conducted, despite the fact that it varies from county to county, and we have 95 counties in Tennessee?
Sure. So you've identified kind of a big problem for folks and kind of the range of responses they'll get when they go to expunge a case that's on their record in a given county. In Tennessee, your experience with expungement will be different based on what happened to your case. Something that I really want people to understand is that just because a case was dismissed doesn't mean it's not on your record anymore. A lot of people will come to us for help with expungement and be worried about probably a conviction that's on their record. But often I'll say, hey, did you know that this other stuff is on your record as well? Like, it's showing up. And oftentimes folks will say, no, that's fine. Case was dismissed. It's not supposed to be there anymore. So the process will vary for you based on kind of how the case ended for you. But very important to know that even if it was dismissed, it's still on your record.
Well, tell me this. You mentioned that sometimes people understand that their records, they're finding that there's other things that happened in their cases that are still on their records. How does that happen? Like, I understand potentially a conviction being on someone's record, but what are some examples of other things that could be on someone's record that necessarily shouldn't be there?
100%. That's a great question. So a lot of people, when they interact with the criminal justice system, if they're charged with a crime, they'll go to court, and maybe the state decides that they can't prove that the person committed the crime, and the state will dismiss that charge against the person. That person will walk out of court and kind of believe that that may be the end of it. So that case doesn't just go away, even though the state hasn't carried its burden. A person needs to take kind of some affirmative action to then expunge that case. Some of our examples of situations like that are if you'll see no true build on a person's record. You'll see that a case has been nollied on a person's record. Those are all kind of words that mean that you weren't convicted and that this case really needs to come off of your record.
That's very interesting. I'm curious about, like, what rights someone who is reentering society, what rights do they not have that they're really trying to restore?
That's a really great question. And that's something I think we're wrestling with. there's a lot kind of going on right now with regard to voting rights restoration. Something that I want people to hear is that if you're convicted of a misdemeanor, that does not trigger the loss of your rights. A lot of folks think that any conviction period will trigger, the loss of their rights of citizenship, and that's just not so. But a felony conviction in Tennessee will trigger the loss of several, we call them citizenship rights. Those include the things that I think people immediately think of, which are voting and the right to bear arms. But also it can include the right to serve as a fiduciary. And this can come up for folks with, maybe a family member dies and a person's named as the executor of a will. If that person's been convicted of a felony and has not had their rights restored, that's a real problem because that person does not have the right to serve as that fiduciary. So there is a process in Tennessee for restoring those rights. Not all people will be eligible to restore all of their rights, but it's important to note, I think, two things. It's only the felony convictions that trigger the loss of those rights, and there's a process to get those rights back.
Now, Vincent, you are the Director of Compliance and Legal Technology at Legal Aid Society. Explain to us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Well, compliance is the not so fun part, and legal technology is the really fun part because I get to support people like Savannah who work passionately within units that we have at Legal Aid, and I can provide them tools to help them help more people and to help more people correctly and quickly. So that's the fun part of what I do. The compliance, since I work in technology, I try to automate that and get through that so we can continue doing what a law firm has to do.
All right. So you're in charge of the AI part of the equation.
I'm in charge of AI. That's a relative term. I'm not sure who's in charge of AI at this point, but yes, I get to play around in AI. I get to develop tools like the expungement tool that we're using right now. So yeah, maybe I'm in charge.
I'm interested in what brought you to this line of work. This is work where, people are really concerned about this. And I know you work a little bit more on the technical side of things, but are you aware of some of the situations that the clients that you all serve have been going through?
Absolutely. I have a deep passion for reentry work in itself. I'm an attorney in my background, and I ran cases. I was a criminal defense attorney for many years before coming to Nashville. And before that, I worked at Legal Aid in Arkansas and worked in technology as well. And before that, I was a carpenter, so I built houses. So it's a perfect fit. I get to build solutions using my technical skill and my legal expertise. So yes, I'm very aware of what our client population has to endure and what it means to get back into society, as they say, in the reentry process.
Now, let me ask this to both of you. Vincent, you first, and then Savannah, I'd love for you to chime in. Given your experience of this work that you've done, tell me this. How can one even survive without expungement? How can someone who has faced, the criminal justice system, potentially been convicted or not, case dismissed, but as these problems of things not being taken from their record, how are people surviving? How can they move forward given this situation that they're in?
It is so difficult. It is a great limiting factor in so many areas of your life, not just employment being a very large one, but housing as well. If you go and try to get a guardianship for a loved one, just over and over, you run into these barriers. So it's extremely difficult. That's compounded in states and jurisdictions that, as Savannah was talking about, can clutter your record with things that you weren't even convicted of. Right. So I urge anyone that can to seek out expungement. And if you are a low income individual, then hopefully you can attend our clinic or call Legal Aid. And I think we will hear later on in the broadcast some life changing stories from people who went through that.
Yeah, we're going to have two former clients of Legal Aid in the next two segments. Savannah, tell me this. How, from your experience, how can one survive without expungement?
It's harder for people with a criminal history that can't be expunged. And I think it's important to note that while we've been talking about cases that, come off someone's record as of right, cases that were dismissed, conviction expungement is harder. And lots of people with a criminal record in Tennessee are going to live with that criminal record for their lives. This, like Vince was talking about, can present, huge challenges for folks. The unemployment rate for folks with a criminal history is higher than the unemployment rate ever was during the Great Depression. We've seen surveys done of employers who review criminal histories, and about a third of them say that even an arrest without a conviction would be somewhat influential in their hiring decisions. We see, a criminal history affecting folks in accessing housing. It's hard for folks to drive. Sometimes if they have a criminal history, court costs. It's really hard. And we're out here doing the best we can, trying to kind of push back on some of those harsh realities, but it's really difficult for folks.
Given these obstacles and roadblocks that people with a criminal history are facing, do you think that this is affecting the recidivism rate that we're facing here in the state?
I don't know how it couldn't. I think that, unless folks are met with supports and services that really support them in finding employment, finding housing, and really participating in the communities, I don't know how we're not setting folks up for failure. We're certainly tying their hands behind their back. It's really tough out there for folks.
What percentage or proportion of Tennesseans file for expungement?
So I'm not certain at all. You've mentioned that we don't have a unified court system in Tennessee, so data like that is really hard to compile. So we don't have in Tennessee really good ways of kind of accessing who is getting their cases expunged.
Wow.
I will say, just kind of like the scope of the issue here, I think almost so. If 1 in 3 Americans has a criminal history, I think everybody that has interacted with the criminal justice system, Tennesseans in particular, have a case on their record that's probably expungible. So when you think about it that way, I think that the scope is just huge, and there's just so many records in Tennessee that need expunging. So I think that probably the proportion of folks that need expungement does not match the proportion of folks that are actually accessing it.
Well, let's talk about the process. How long? I know there's 95 counties, and each county really has their own individual process. But on average, how long does the process take?
I generally advise folks that the expungement journey, once an order is signed, to expect it to take around 8 weeks. That's actually down over the years. I used to expect it to kind of take a little bit longer. But I think that, I think the TBI has kind of done some updating, modernizing in their system, and it seems to be it's coming more quickly. But that can be frustrating for folks too, because, I see my order signed, I'm walking out, I'm feeling great, my stuff has been expunged, but there is a bit of a lag time there after your order is signed. But, the process of getting to that order can be lengthy too, depending on what county you're in, what supports are available to you, whether or not you have an attorney. So that 2 months is only after that order is signed. So
wow. I mean, Vincent, how much time does AI take out of the equation?
Well, I think Savannah is speaking to some of the process of going through the courts, getting the order signed. Insofar as the technology tools that we've developed has reduced paperwork and getting through some of the complexities of the law dramatically. I mean, seconds, as opposed to days and hours that an attorney would spend with the client figuring it out.
Okay. I'm imagining some people might be listening will ask, like, why do the courts that you all have worked with, why do the courts believe that expungement is even necessary if time served is supposed to constitute your payment for crimes committed? People are looking like, okay, you got convicted, people served maybe for their full 4 years or got out for good behavior. Why is there an expungement process even necessary for that? Can either of you explain that?
I'll speak to that real quick, Savannah, and then you can bring in your expertise. As a previous criminal defense attorney, you can do things on the front end, and we don't do criminal law at Legal Aid. We do free civil legal services. But there are things that you can do in many situations, not all situations, where that can be an automatic process in certain jurisdictions. Tennessee, I think it's a matter of mindset and policy. It's certainly a matter of law to where we feel that there are things, and by we, I don't mean me, but the state of Tennessee feels that there are other steps that must be completed. Why? I do not know. They should be automatic, in my opinion. But Savannah,
I 100% agree with you. I think that's probably a question of policy and the way that expungement law exists. I think that, Vince, you're right. The way we think about expungement, again, it's not accessible for a lot of people with these convictions that are really bothering folks. And I think that you can kind of see the policy decisions in the law with regard to what's expungible and what's not. But in terms of why it's not automatic, I think that, we're doing the work that we need to be doing to make sure that these expungements are as accessible as possible. And then I think that, it's policy fixes that need to happen in order to make those even more accessible, maybe automatic.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. So Savannah Quintero and Vincent Morris with Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee are our guests on This Is Nashville, talking about expungement and how AI can make a positive difference. They're going to be here for the whole show, but joining us in the next segment is a Legal Aid Society board member and former client, Dallas Reddy. He has his own experience with expungement process. Before we hear from him, we're going to take this short break. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com. Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Kulona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to the show. Our topic today is expungement and how artificial intelligence holds potential power to accelerate the process. But more importantly, how are people impacted by criminal charges that seem to stick for years, even decades in some cases, after the gavel was brought down? Why does everyone deserve a second chance? These are grand questions, and we're going to try to answer them. So here to answer these questions are representatives from the Legal Aid Society. We've got Savannah Quintero and Vincent Morris. But joining us as well for this segment is Dallas Reddy, who's going to share his journey through the legal process. Dallas, welcome. Thanks for being here. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm just a 40-year-old automation engineer from Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived here since I was 6 years old. It's been a wonderful place to grow up and enjoy my time. Nashville really is a wonderful city. It's growing faster, and I really appreciate being here.
All right.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. So you've had some life experience with the criminal justice system. Can you tell us what that was?
Yes, sir. When I was about 19, 20 years old, I got into some trouble with drugs. It was a possession charge that turned quickly into a violation of probation and then snowballed into a felony conviction of a Schedule 4 controlled substance. At the time, I was young, pretty naive, did not understand that the justice system is a very big giant, especially for individuals, young people that aren't prepared, that are maybe not getting along with their parents or their parent at the time. I had just lost my dad 4 years before my conviction. So I don't believe my head was necessarily in the right place anyway. But my experience was pretty traumatic. I violated probation, was incarcerated on an 1129 in Williamson County Jail.
What's an 1129?
11 months, 29 days. So
Okay.
that's the longest you can be held for a misdemeanor violation in the state of Tennessee.
Gotcha.
So very traumatic to spend that type of time in incarceration, especially since I came from what I considered a somewhat privileged life. You know, I had a good childhood, upper middle class. My dad was a veterinarian in the area until he passed, and you know, felt like I was a very lucky individual. But once I came into contact with law enforcement, it was a very different story. It can be a huge burden for young people to understand. And so moving forward, it took me 25 years to finally find some recourse to this situation. And it was really only with legal aid's help.
I do want to ask you a little bit more about
Sure.
that, but you just said something that made me curious. You're talking about young people really being confronted with the criminal justice system.
Yes, sir.
And yet the fact that you came from a pretty privileged background. You
Yes,
know?
sir.
Not all young people who enter the system are going through that, but there are some. What support system did you had as a young man, as you were going through this process?
Well, I can honestly say that this is where I had a wonderful support system if I had chosen to use it. Unfortunately, when we're young and naive and we're just trying to be individuals, often we take for granted those loved ones around us that are willing to help. So I kind of went down a path of solitude thinking I was smart enough to handle the legal system on my own. I was enrolled in college, so I thought I had a fair understanding of political science and the Constitution. But I was completely unprepared for the fact that the criminal justice system is more geared for efficiency rather than justice, rather than seeking, a just solution for a problem.
So many years later, you started piecing your life back together. How did you start doing that after you got out?
Well, I took any job that I could. It was very difficult. It was very embarrassing. Every application these days wants you to not only check a box, they want you to list any possible criminal or convictions that are on your record, even anything. It doesn't even have to be a conviction. It was an arrest record or whatever somebody could find. And I often found that when I got into these different jobs, they would leverage that information against me to keep me into a position of, I say, servitude. So it's very difficult when you're employed as a felon to seek out a better job for fear of losing what you have, or because the job that you're at may find out that you're applying for another job. And the situation that I ran into is I worked for a company, gave them 5 years, was promoted many, many times, became their ultimate lead technician in their shop. And in that 5 years, I had made them a significant amount of money. Well, when I went on to find a better job, this job found out about it. They turned around and fired me immediately, sued me for $1 million.
On what grounds?
Still to this day, I'm not sure. It was one of these things. It doesn't have to be right. You can sue for any reason in court.
Yeah,
frivolous lawsuits these days are very common. They thought that because I was a felon, that I would have no status in a court. I would not be able to defend myself in a civil lawsuit. It was a strategic play.
How did that play out?
Well, it cost me my future job endeavor. They had given me a offer letter. I had talked to the HR at this better company, And they literally told me that you're part of the family. Go ahead and turn in your application or turn in your resignation. I turned in my resignation and I was done the next day. Like they did not even honor that courtesy. It was very unfortunate because I lost 2 jobs basically in one day.
How did your family support you during that time?
This is the only way I survived, and that's why I think it's so important to seek out help anywhere you can. I was blessed to have a wonderful mother and sister. I don't have a really big, diverse family, and so there's a level of shame that comes from a conviction, and that's probably the biggest deterrent, I think, for most people is the shame of it. It's easy to keep in your back pocket when you're not trying to grow as an individual, but when you have to really put yourself out there and be honest, it's very embarrassing.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking about AI and expungement. We've got guests Savannah Quintero and Vincent Morris from the Legal Aid Society, and we're also talking to a board member of the Legal Aid Society and former client, Dallas Reddy. Now, Dallas, given this situation and your experience, I'm going to ask you a big question. How can this criminal justice system we live under, how can it be improved?
That's a really great question. I believe this is a space where I think there's a lot of room for creative solutions. I think that Tennessee has a tendency of not following through with a lot of the processes that are on the books. The restoration of rights program for Tennessee. I was lucky enough to have my voters' registration rights restored before I came into contact with Legal Aid Society. I was not able to get any expungements or a full restoration of rights until I contacted them. I would say that even if you don't qualify for a full restoration, it is very, very important to maintain your voting rights. This is how you affect change in this state, because I believe there needs to be investment in those that we consider to be criminals. I consider a lot of those people that we consider criminals to be good people that just were put into a terrible situation or a bad set of circumstances. I don't believe people should be judged by the worst day of their life. And I think that Tennesseans as a whole, we're the volunteer state, so we really should step up and support these individuals, because the alternative is really just punishment, and you're going to put these people into a position where they're going to reoffend if they have no opportunities to improve.
You mentioned the embarrassment that comes with having a conviction that you have to deal with, and I imagine that embarrassment comes from other people's views. You know, you talked about how your former employer tried to use this as a weapon against you, and it scared off your future employer, somebody who was welcoming you with open arms. That comes off to me as the stigma along with things. And we talk about stigma on This Is Nashville with homelessness, with a lot of issues, drug use and things. There is definitely a stigma of people who have been convicted of crimes. So, you know, we're talking with a lot of people listening to this right now. What is a challenge you have for them to really look at themselves and reconsider how they approach people who have been convicted of crimes in the past?
I would first look to understand what put them into that position and how they've changed since their crime was committed. Oftentimes, these things follow people for decades, as in my case. It was over 20 years that I had a felony conviction on my record. In those 25 years, it was just a steady slope of my self-worth being depleted. I remember the day that my rights were restored by the Legal Aid Society. It was the happiest day I could remember in my adult lifetime, because I finally felt like I could participate in society. Things as simple as, you know, showing up to, you know, public school events, basketball games. There's a lot of stipulations more than voting and gun rights that come with felony possession. Even in custody battles and various things, there can be some really adverse outcomes to those.
Now, I understand that because of your conviction and what you've gone through for the past 25 years, you decided not to have kids, right?
Yes, it was an unfortunate decision. I just felt like with a felony conviction in this state, I don't believe we're ever seen as rehabilitated. I believe we're always tarnished with a mark. And I didn't want to tarnish my legacy with that burden. I didn't want my family to suffer for my mistakes. So therefore, I just chose to forego it completely.
That goes to speak to the judgment that we have of others often.
Yes, sir.
That's interesting. I'd love to talk more with you about that, but I do want to ask this. There's other people who are going to find themselves who are currently in a situation similar to yours. What suggestions do you have for them?
Understand you're a good person, that maybe you made a bad choice. I don't believe anyone is defined by a single choice or a single day. I think that if you want to pursue a life, you need to take advantage of every opportunity you can to improve your statistics and your odds. I believe with a felony conviction, that is nearly impossible. If you're suffering with that type of issue, seek help, never give up. That I can tell you for a fact. I had met with attorneys for over 20 years. Different types of organizations. I had explored this for many, many years, trying to find a path to what I consider freedom. And it was only when I found Legal Aid Society that I found hope. But it took a lot of disappointment before I got there. I had a lot of no's. So don't give up. Don't stop at the first attorney that tells you no, it's not possible. Because I found that something that I was told was impossible was very possible when I met with Legal Aid Society.
How long did it take?
It was kind of an interesting situation. I remember being home, watching the news, Talk of the Town, and they actually ran an ad saying, the Legal Aid Society was doing an expungement clinic in Franklin, Williamson County, and they were accepting 100 applicants at the time. So they just signed up on the link. There was some various information that I had to fill out and submitted. About a month later or less, I got a response saying that I had qualified for the expungement clinic. Didn't know quite what to expect. I had attended an event several months before that here in Davidson County with, I believe the event was sponsored by Judge Rachel Bell. She ran an expungement clinic, and I was able to get a reckless driving ticket off my record, which definitely helped with my insurance, if you know what I mean. But it started me down the path of how do I clean up this mess that's been sitting there for so long? And you just have to start somewhere.
I think one of the general themes of this of expungement and looking at our society is people deserve second chances. We often give second chances to celebrities, but not to regular folks. What do you say about that?
That's very interesting. I would definitely agree that second chances are very, very difficult for common people to come by. There again, I would say to all those people that are suffering, don't judge yourself by the way society sees you. Just look to do good in the world progressively, a little more every day, and I feel like good things will wind up happening.
How has this second chance helped you?
It's been revolutionary for me. It helped me a lot with my family. Like I said, the shame of it all, knowing that they have to tell other people, it was just a very embarrassing and traumatic experience. But not only that, the employment, the main reason I considered pursuing expungement is I take a lot of value out of volunteer work. And what I came into contact with was anytime I wanted to volunteer my free time, I had to fill out an application and was denied very often because I had a felony conviction. That's why I was so excited when I had this expungement. I actually immediately got to start delivering for Meals on Wheels, which I take a tremendous amount of pleasure from because community service is what it's all about for me. I really, really do enjoy giving back. And I think that when you're when others aren't allowed to do those volunteer activities, they're just set aside. There's no value. I don't know. People have a hard time getting their value, understanding their worth.
I really appreciate you coming on, joining us, sharing your story about rebuilding your life and your journey of reentry. Dallas Reddy, Thank you again for being here, my friend.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one last break. Savannah and Vincent are going to stay with us for the last segment. Joining them will be Amanda Atkins. She's another client who will share her story about how her second chance not only improved her lives, but the lives of her children as well. Don't go anywhere. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Kulona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to today's show. If you're just joining us, we have spent the hour discussing expungement and the importance of second chances. Expunging a criminal case can take months, if not years. The process is long, complicated, and varies from county to county. To help clarify matters, we have with us on Zoom, Legal Aid Society members Savannah Quintero and Vincent Morris. Our third guest is another former client who has firsthand experience with expungement in Tennessee, Amanda Atkins. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you.
All right, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience that led you here?
Well, my name is Amanda Atkins. I'm calling from Springfield, Tennessee. And my experience that led me to legal aid.
Savannah, can you hear me?
Was at a young age, 19, I believe. I got a shoplifting charge from a store. I wish to not disclose that store. But little did I know I had been followed for about 5 years. So it started earlier than 19. I just got caught at 19. And when I finally got caught, it was 5 misdemeanor charges that the company wanted to actually turn into a felony charge. I guess to hold me down even more. So that right there was enough to know, like, the legal system is not what I want to go through. But however, that's where it began.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I ask you, what was, over these 5 years while this company was tracking you, what was going on in your life?
Well, I was a single mother at a very young age. And
we're here with you. Take your time. Savannah, you okay? Amanda, you okay?
yeah, be okay.
Take your time, sweetheart. I understand it's hard.
I felt like because sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Let me ask you this. I understand that the situation was very hard of what you went through, and you got help from legal aid. Can you tell me this? How did you end up connecting with legal aid to get help in your situation?
I was actually at the Career Center in Robertson County for like a job fair is exactly what it was. And I was there. They were going to help me, match me with some people that, like, job history that I had that I enjoyed and enjoy doing. But while I was there, there was a worker at the Career Center that actually had invited legal aid to come there. And when she heard my concerns about what was keeping me from obtaining a great job that I was looking for, she actually matched me with the expungement clinic there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What happened next?
Well, it was a few of us. I really relate a lot to Dallas's story. I think it was like the first 100 people that could get in. Some people that was there was not a match with legal aid, but however, most of us that were there was. Um, Now I applied for legal aid and um, I didn't hear anything for a while, and I say that lightly
Mm.
because when I first got on the case, um, Savannah was not ever mentioned. Like, I didn't even connect with Savannah for maybe a year after I had applied for legal aid help. And I believe there was a reason of a worker was not working there no longer and flipped all of his cases over to her, maybe.
Mm.
That might not be 100% correct, but it's somewhere in that area that I actually got reconnected with legal aid and Savannah. And at that point, I was literally in shock because I kind of just forgot about it. You know, when you're in the criminal system, you just feel forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Dallas was expressing similar sentiments. You know, you have two daughters who you
I
love,
do.
who you love very, 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 very much. What did it mean to your family after you got everything expunged through the help of Savannah and everyone at Legal Aid Society? What did it mean for you and your daughters to have this finally put in the past?
Well, um, it's kind of like a second chance. And it made me feel like I could fill out an application and answer questions honestly without having the fear of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be judgment for the second time. Um, and it put me in great spirits and high hopes that one day I would not be ashamed of my name or um, we all have a past. Some people are caught, some people are not caught. But there is grace. You just got to find it. And once you find it, you do have a different outlook on life. And you see people that go through the same things that you have went through, and going through it yourself, you have a very, very, very good understanding of how they also feel.
Mm-hmm. You said maybe one day you'll be able to get rid of the shame and the stigma of this. And Dallas mentioned that as well, the shame that comes with this. Are you still looking to rid yourself of the shame of what happened in the past, even though you've been exonerated and things seem to be a lot brighter?
I'm not ashamed because I did what I thought I had to do in the meantime. Being a single mother at a young age feels like a burden within itself. So to make ends meet, so to say, and being a trying mother that, no one would hire because of their background and because of age and, schedules and stuff like that. Um, I'm not ashamed at all. I'm very blessed and I thank God for growth during the process because had I not been given a second chance, I don't know where I would be right now.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about, I think second chances is the theme of this entire hour. Why is it important for all of us to look at the folks?
If you don't give second chances to someone, how can they ever prove that the lesson is learned or that they are better than what they used to be. And it does start young. You know, as teenagers, we think we know everything.
Hmm.
We don't want help from no one. Like, we're honorary. It's just amazing how little we really know at that big age of ours. But now that you get older, and you see things for what they are, you know better. And if second chance is not given, how can you prove um, that you're sorry for? You know, like even at school on a test, if you make a bad grade, most of the times the teachers give you that second chance to show them that you know what you're doing. You just have to show your work
Mm-hmm.
in the process. And some processes may be longer than others, but the second chance, someone out there has to be willing to give you that for you to show your work.
Mm-hmm. Show the work of growth. That's really profound. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Amanda. We have Savannah Quintero and Vincent Morris from the Legal Aid Society still with us. I do want to ask real quick about these expungement clinics and how it works, but real important for both of you, you know, why is it so important for the attorneys to have compassion for people who are reentering society? Savannah?
I think that expungement clinics and doing expungement work for attorneys who maybe practice have never thought about volunteering or even touching an expungement case can be life-changing, absolutely life-changing for an attorney doing this work because it's absolutely addicting. It's such an as attorneys, I think we kind of have this superpower where we can, you know, just a little bit of work from us can absolutely change someone's life. And at these legal clinics, I think that's what we get to do. And as an attorney, if there's any out there listening that are interested in volunteering at a clinic, I think it's absolutely a life-changing experience for the attorney as well as, you know, the folks that they get to work with.
Well, tell me more about these clinics. How do they work?
So it depends. There's lots of different models that we run just based on the resources that we have in a given county. But essentially, like we were talking about kind of in our first block, there are tons of records that need expunging in Tennessee. So we've kind of developed these different models of expungement clinics in order to kind of attack these records en masse. You know, a lot of these clinics will have, and this was like the Williamson County Clinic that Dallas came to, will have judges, the clerk's office, the public defenders, the district attorney's office, and volunteer attorneys all coming together, and they're all in one room to provide this excellent service for folks quickly. I think I've heard Dallas say that he was there for an hour, and the experience kind of, you know, was life altering for him, we've heard.
Mm-hmm.
So these expungement clinics are really, really powerful events. And I, you know, feel really privileged to be able to be a part of them.
Now, Savannah or Vincent, what are some of the first steps for someone who's caught up in the haze of reentry? What are some of the first steps that they can do to help themselves out?
I'll take that, Savannah. Obviously, the steps that Dallas and Amanda heard, and wow, what wisdom they dropped. But they spoke, I think both of them had some issues with actually getting a free attorney, right? So that's part of the tools that we've developed. Dallas said, I think 100 apps were limited. Since then, in creating tools, we've now done clinics with over 700 people. And with the partnerships with the judges, Judge Bell and others, not just the expungements, but also we've had fees waived that has been hanging over people so they couldn't get driver's license, et cetera, in the hundreds of thousands. So the first thing is getting to the clinic. And we're hoping that our work now with AI and other technology is making that happen. Instead of 100 applications, over 700 people could be served, right? And in multiple locations too. Our last clinic was in 2 locations, telebroadcasted from one place to another into North Nashville, the most incarcerated zip code in the nation as of 2018. And so get there and let us help you.
All right. To find out more information on what Legal Aid Society can do for you or a loved one, visit LAS.org. That's LAS.org. Amanda Atkins, Vincent Morris, and Savannah Quintero, thank you all for joining us on This Is Nashville and making us aware of this. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
If you don't mind, I will also say this before closing. Having a criminal record can limit your opportunities and create a predetermined stereotype, which does not give you a fair chance compared to someone without a record. If you feel like you have a record, please contact Savannah at Legal Aid. And to speed the process up, it would be great if you had your transcripts from the courthouse showing everything that you've ever been charged with, just to make it a little more speedy on her behalf.
Thank you. Y'all listen to Amanda. She knows of what she speaks. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing this wisdom. Thanks to you for turning into This Is Nashville. We're a production of Nashville Public Radio. The episode was produced by Josh Deepan, directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Liv Lombardi is on the boards. The masterminds behind our theme music, Larange and Namir Blade. You can call us up. Let us know what you want to hear from the show. 615-751-2500. Hit us up on socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, and X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil A. Colonna. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.